She was not supposed to notice her. In a stadium filled with 23,000 people, one 80-year-old woman sitting in a wheelchair and holding a sign that her granddaughter had spent 3 nights painting should have been just another face in the crowd. But she wasn't. Coco Gauff had just closed out one of the biggest wins of her season. Cameras were already being packed away, and by every normal rule of how these moments usually go, the story was over. Then she turned back. What happened in the next 11 seconds was not on the broadcast schedule. It was not a sponsor activation, and nobody in that tunnel had been told to have a camera ready. Yet within 6 hours, the clip had reportedly crossed 11 million views, not because of what Gauff won that day, but because of what she gave away. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly who that woman was, why her sign was written in 2 languages, and why tennis insiders are calling this the most talked about exchange of the entire tournament. Bigger, some are saying, than any match play that week. To understand why this moment hit so hard, you first had to understand who was sitting in that wheelchair. Her name, according to fan accounts circulating after the video went viral, is Estelle, a retired school teacher from Queens who has held a U.S. Open ground pass for more than 40 consecutive years, longer than most players on tour have been alive and longer than the current Arthur Ashe Stadium has even existed. Filipino-American tennis communities quickly picked up the story as well, and not by accident. Estelle's sign, fans noted, was bilingual, English on one side and Tagalog on the other, and had been made by her granddaughter, who has been documenting her grandmother's decades-long love of tennis online. That single fact turned a sweet gesture into a story that crossed 2 audiences at once, American tennis loyalty and Filipino diaspora pride, both watching the same footage for very different reasons. Nobody planned any of it. Gauff did not know Estelle's history when she looked up into the stands. She only knew that the sign had been there, in some form, at every match she had played during that tournament. Start with a pattern, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. 3 matches earlier, during the second round, courtside cameras had already caught Gauff glancing toward the same section of the stands. Fans watching the broadcast live noticed it in real time, a small wave, a quick nod, nothing more. At the time, nobody thought much of it. In hindsight, it feels like the first frame of a story nobody knew was being written. A spare racket pulled from a bag for a photo opportunity. That is an easy explanation, but it does not appear to be the right one. Courtside reporters who reviewed the footage reportedly matched the frame and racket details to the exact racket Gauff had used throughout that match, with the string still marked from play and the grip still worn from the pressure competition. It did not look like a scripted sponsor activation. It looked like instinct. A nearby fan captured the moment on a phone, and the clip has since been shared thousands of times. In the footage, Gauff leans toward Estelle before handing the racket over and says something short, mostly inaudible in the original recording. People standing closest described it as something along the lines of, "This has been yours longer than it's been mine." Whether that was the exact wording or simply the internet polishing the moment in its retelling, the sentiment was what spread, but what nobody expected was what happened next. Estelle didn't just cry. With help, she slowly stood from her seat for the first time during the entire tournament to hug a 21-year-old world number 1 who had defeated a top 10 opponent just 40 minutes earlier. Security did not intervene. The crowd did not rush the moment. For nearly 30 seconds, one of the loudest stadiums in American sports reportedly felt almost completely silent. Within a day, Filipino sports pages were running the story alongside American outlets. Not because Gauff has any personal connection to the Philippines, but because Estelle's bilingual sign had already made the story feel shared. Comment sections in Manila and comment sections in New Jersey were saying, in different ways, essentially the same thing. This is why people watch this sport. By the next day, Estelle's granddaughter posted an update. The racket now sits in a display case in their living room beside 40 years of ticket stubs. No sponsor reportedly reached out, and no formal statement was issued by Gauff's team. Fans noted that the silence was almost as powerful as the gesture itself, proof, to many, that the moment was never intended to become a headline in the first place. Compress the timeline, and it becomes obvious that this was never really about a racket. A teenager waved at a stranger during the second round. A grandmother held up a sign written in 2 languages. A champion noticed both. And for 30 seconds, a stadium of 23,000 strangers became one audience, all feeling the same thing at the same time. Here's what makes this moment different from the hundreds of sweet athlete clips that flood social media every week. Most of those are staged, sponsored, or timed for a camera that was already rolling for that exact purpose. This one wasn't. There was no brand logo, no prearranged photo opportunity, and no press release the next morning. Just a champion who looked into the stands, recognized for decades of loyalty represented by one woman in a wheelchair, and made a decision in real time that no marketing team had scripted. That's why it didn't just go viral once. It kept going viral, reposted, translated, and subtitled in 3 different languages by fans who had never watched a tennis match in their lives. Because the clip eventually stopped being about tennis at all. It became something much bigger, a story about what it means to truly be seen. So, here's the question worth arguing over in the comments. Did this moment introduce Coco Gauff to a whole new generation of fans? Or was it simply proof of who she already was, on a stage finally big enough for the entire world to notice? If you think this moment defines a career off the court as much as any trophy defines it on the court, drop a comment and tell us why. Tag someone who needs to see this today. This channel is going to keep tracking every gesture like this one, every viral clip, every follow-up, and every reason this sport continues to prove that it's about much more than the final score. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.